why we got so much rain. What is set up in the atmosphere to do that, and could it happen again?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look back July, right? I mean, we see a lot of these types of things, and we don't necessarily have a big, powerful area of low pressure. At one glance, you'd look at it and say, there's nothing really remarkable about this, but there is hiding in the details, and we're going to talk about that right now, because that's the heavy rain yesterday, midday, that brought a lot of flooding once again to the Northeast.
I read someone describing this rain as the kind of rain they got from when Hurricane Ida came up through here.
Okay, that's it. That tells you a clue. When you start talking about rainfall rates that are similar to a hurricane, you know you've got tropical moisture in play. So what we did was, let's take a look at where the air came from that was involved in this rain. So these are called trajectories, and you can run them backward in time to say, hey, the air that's associated with this heavy rain, where did it come from? And one way you can look at it is by doing this kind of calculation. And what we see is, in fact, that when I try to click forward, you'll be able to tell in just a second. There we go. That you'll be able to see that the air over New England, that little star up there, in the week prior had come all the way across the Gulf Stream, right? And even before that was either in the tropical Atlantic or was over there in the Gulf of Mexico. So this air came from those source regions, moved over that very, 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 I might add, warm water, and kicked up a lot of moisture as it moved along.
All that to say, there was a lot of moisture that we had to, for these systems to work with, essentially.
More so than usual with sea surface temperatures, the water temperatures. They were so warm, so they're throwing more water vapor into the atmosphere. So as the air is coming around the Atlantic, as I just showed you, in through the Gulf of Mexico and along the Gulf Stream, it's the entire time over very warm water, all the while picking up a lot of water vapor. And by the time it gets to New England, is unloading tropical rainfall, which is what you were mentioning.
So if you live in the mountains in the Northeast and you think, oh, the fact that we have warming Gulf water temperatures doesn't affect me, it does.
It does.
Because the air is traveling from there.
That's such a good point. Warm in the Atlantic and over the waters, well, it's because that air that's sitting over that warm water gets tied into your weather systems in the Northeast.
And this is the second week that we've had to deal with this. So you can't say, okay, we're one and done. Unfortunately, with the way things are set up, this could happen again.
It's going to happen again, and we're kind of in this pattern. So this takes us again to yesterday, what the rainfall looked like. I have a feeling we're going to see more of these in the coming days. This is just one front that moved through, and you might think, again, as I mentioned, as I started off the discussion, this is a progressive pattern that moved through. Why did it produce all that rain? Well, when you get a whole bunch of these with all that tropical moisture, heads up.
Yeah, interesting. It's the rainfall rates that really get you, and tropical moisture will do that. We should talk about this here. I think it's great that he actually ended and realized he needed to get some medical treatment, because heat stroke is the most serious heat-related illness. And when temperatures rise, you need to act quickly to stay safe.
Absolutely. Meteorologist Alex Wilson shares what you need to know.
Let's run through some differences between heat stroke and heat exhaustion here. They're actually quite different, which is interesting, because you think one would just get worse with the other. But heat exhaustion, lightheaded, excessive sweating. It's interesting with heat stroke, usually no sweating.
Yeah, he's really starting to dry out there. Nausea and vomiting, that's two things that are similar with both, I should say. But muscle cramps, something you watch out for when it comes to heat exhaustion. And you could end up losing consciousness when it comes to heat stroke. So, yeah, definitely two things you do not want to be dealing with here. So prepping before you get out into the heat, and when you're in the heat, knowing what to do, seeking the shade, drinking the water, and just taking those breaks is so key to staying healthy.
Yeah, and being aware of what you're about to get yourself into. If you're doing any kind of traveling in the West, know that it is hot, exceptionally hot, that even at, Phoenix standards, it's hot. We've got excessive heat warnings that are up. Texas again, the warnings, the watches continue here. This big heat dome, which we really dealt with in the Southern Plains for much of June, has now really expanded over the West.
Yeah, so you can see today highs in Redding there in California. 108, Salt Lake City is going to be very hot as well, along with, of course, staying very toasty there in the state of Texas.
Yeah, the dew point's a big part of this. And when the dew points are up here, it's going to make it feel even worse. Now, in some cases like Phoenix, you might say, well, that's not that bad, a dew point of 60. But when your temperature is 117 degrees, it is.
That's going to be a really tough time in Phoenix, because generally you take on about a more drier heat in those areas. With 116 there, that's your forecast heat index there in Phoenix, because, again, we're seeing those those dew point readings really start to climb a bit. So take it slow in those spots. And even farther to the east, where we may not be as hot with the actual highs, when you factor in those dew points being up into the low 70s in some cases, it's going to feel like it's in the triple digits.
Yeah, no, it gets hard. And this is the time of year when kids are back and doing some of those outdoor camps, getting ready, summer sports, getting ready for the fall sports here. You need to make sure they have hydration and shade. We're going to be dealing with this, feels like here, above 100 all week. And actually by Wednesday, it's growing. 102 million that will have that feels like above 100.
More folks having to deal with it. All right, well, don't forget our question of the day.
America's Morning Headquarters, one state is keeping a close eye on the tropics as a storm barrels in, bringing the threat of heavy rain and wind.
Plus, beach hot.
Right now, it is World Emoji Day, and we want to know what emoji or emojis would you
just feel it?
Yeah.
I can see it there. Yeah.
Just steamy too. I mean, just those dew points, like almost boiling.
Exactly. Oh man, yeah, those can be tough days, absolutely. But it's that time of the year where we get that happening, right? Where you get the heat and the humidity. You're sweating just profusely, and the skies open up, and you think, oh, relief.
Yeah.
Brief. Because the sun comes back up.
Oh, yeah, it's even worse, actually, when the sun comes back up. The other story out there is the smoke, and there really wasn't a way to find an emoji for that. I'm sure there is, the fire.
Al sent us a comment with an emoji. He did it pretty well.
Okay, I got to check that out.
Yeah.
Because this is the scene in Atlanta right now, and that's wildfire smoke from Canada.
Yes, made it all the way into parts of the South. Saw it this morning, looked at the outside of the... Take a picture, but I had to be responsible. I was driving, so I didn't take a picture.
At a red light, I just need a little picture. The mid-morning hours.
That's right, the Weather Channel. We're here to help you plan out for the big events ahead. And I tell you, on top of our minds, yet again, it's the flooding that we've had to deal with here. That's the forefront there for parts of the Northeast. Just got pummeled by more heavy rain, really filling up some of the streets and neighborhoods. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. We've been following flooding for the last week when parts of Vermont were swallowed by rising rivers.
And the streams were filling up very quickly. And that was emblematic of what we saw over much of the Northeast over the last few days.
Yeah, in multiple different occasions. We saw that in Pennsylvania over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday. Yesterday was up into Rhode Island. Providence had one of their top wettest days, 5th wettest July day on record.
And that's gonna cause problems.
And that was just one day. I mean, if you go back over the last week, we've seen a lot of rain. This is an estimate from the radars. Their support from the ground truth, the observations. But look, we've had in some of those areas shaded in yellow, 3 to 5 inches of rain, in some cases 5 to 8, and even then some beyond that. That's a lot of rain in hilly terrain in the Northeast, where flooding can be very dangerous with far less amounts than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the worst combination. You had the heavy rain, then you add the terrain into it as well, and that is just a recipe for what we unfortunately had to deal with.
What made it even worse is that there was also severe wind, and there was a tornado that was in Worcester, and you have 0. I mean, look at nearly 300 storm reports from this area.
And that's flooding. I mean, that's unbelievable, right? So we had excessive amounts of rain. It kind of moved through pretty quickly. So why did it produce so many issues for us? Well, if you look at this radar recap, you can kind of see why. Beginning now, this is Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Not a lot going on. You think, okay, normal day, right? Saturday, not so bad. And then Sunday rolls around, and by Sunday midday, we have that front coming through with rain showers and thunderstorms, but a lot of flooding as well. We're going to talk about why a system like that produced so much rain so quickly.
Yeah. Even that looks like not a big deal until you dissect it, which we will do coming up.
Indeed.
All right, well, this weekend, flash flooding, that no doubt took a tragic turn in Pennsylvania. 5 people died when high water trapped drivers in Bucks County.
Reporter Waukesha Bailey from our CBS partner KYW shows us how first responders are searching for 2 children who are believed to have been also caught up in the flooding. That's a devastating story.
It really is. Of course, search efforts, they have increased to get ahead of the incoming weather as we look ahead to even more rain that could come into these areas, not helping matters at all.
Yeah, this is the rain yet to come over the next few days. And it says 1 to 2 inches in the sort of darker shades of green. But trust me, they're going to be locally higher amounts than that, for the same reasons that we've seen it over and over again in recent days. The rain that comes in, there'll be showers, heavy showers, and they'll be very efficient rainmakers. So watch out for more flooding.
Yeah, and well, this time the soil is even more saturated. And, you know, the creeks already have water, you know, in them significantly. So it's a concern getting into this week.
The pattern's kind of stuck. I mean, right, we had the end of this week, and then we're not done, because this jet stream that you see behind me is kind of locked in, right? I mean,
for a month or so.
We were talking about this off camera. It's like, I remember seeing this type of weather pattern in the jet stream back in April. And, you know, it's shifted around a little bit. But overall, we've seen repeated rounds of this kind of, right here, there's a cold front coming in tomorrow, and that's just system number one. There's another one behind it, all part of that jet stream that's locked in.
All right, well, coming up, we'll talk more about why this particular air was special in the Northeast here, what made that happen. But also, you know, got to look ahead to what's coming.
Absolutely. Heavy rain going to be a big deal.
I've been pretty active here into southern Missouri, southern Illinois, a couple in southern Indiana and Kentucky. We've had a lot of rain come through. Things are kind of waning a little bit in terms of less lightning anyway happening for you, but still rain out there. If you're traveling down I-65 south of Louisville to Bowling Green, roads still wet out there. Rain heading south of Lexington. Still thunderstorms ongoing in southeastern Missouri. We haven't been able to break that, but at least in St. Louis, we have caught a bit of a break here after 2 rounds of thunderstorms over the weekend. I know there's some of you still without power now, so hopefully today's little break at the moment gives the power crews a chance to get everyone back. We had some big rain though. Look at these 3 and 4.5 inch totals estimated by radar south and west of St. Louis. We also had a number of areas though with more than an inch, and you know, so often anymore you got to get to 3, 4, 5 inches before we think that's a big deal. An 1.5 inches of rain is still a big deal, especially to get in a short period of time. And so, you know, we're going to keep an eye on all of this as more thunderstorms develop today. And you notice there were some storms out there right now, but none were at severe risks. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's to come through the afternoon. We're actually going to see what's going on at the moment, kind of relax, and then new thunderstorms develop. This is out ahead of the front, and these are the ones that will pack more of a punch, using up some of that instability that will build in the atmosphere with it getting hot out, with it being so humid out. We'll see that in Missouri and Kentucky, southern Illinois. Look at St. Louis. Yes, we could get more thunderstorms out of this coming in late tonight. Indianapolis, we got a chance as well, and continues rolling in this pattern, eventually heading into the Northeast as we get into the day tomorrow. Now, one other zone we've been watching for storms is right across.
How long that will continue, but foreseeable future, Jen. I mean, where's the monsoon?
I know.
That would help us out.
And that's surprising to me this year that I expected to kind of be active right on time.
Yeah. Right. Not happening.
Well, according to
air quality issues here with the smoke, which is really filling the skies for a pretty large zone from the Midwest all the way down even into parts of the South where we're seeing some of the smoke filling up the skies.
So this is the past 24 hours, and you know, saw it in Iowa, you saw it in Illinois, Chicago, one of the spots too. But it really has expanded here over the last 24 hours. So the Northeast, the Green Mountains in Vermont. Justin Michael sent a picture on social media this morning, and it's very smoky out there.
Absolutely, indeed. So it's really taken over here over the last 24 hours. This is not the first bout of the wildfire smoke that we've had to deal with here, but doesn't mean we're getting used to it, right? We've got a number of states where you can see we're under air quality alerts, including the entire state of Iowa, moving down into a good chunk of Indiana, and then also several states here in sections of the Northeast.
Yeah, I checked this morning, and the top air quality alerts, or worst air quality in the world, I guess is a better way to put it. Minneapolis, Chicago, Detroit, D.C., all in the top 10. So tough day again. You can see the smoke on the visible satellite here. That's just how intense it is all the way down into the deep south. So your sky in Huntsville, the reason it's a little smoky, the sun was so red, it's because of wildfires.
Yeah, so we can blame Canada. I mean, essentially here with all the wildfires that continue to burn there, it has been a really, really tough wildfire season for the folks there up in Canada. But all that smoke, at times, depending on how the winds are faring, they make it down onto here to the U.S. But look at the coming days, and we do think there will be some improvement. Here's a look at the smoke forecast, at least the near surface smoke, and you do see that kind of getting washed out of here over the next few days.
Back in early June, when we had that really bad, apocalyptic smoke, remember, in the Northeast here, and someone asked me, well, is this going to happen again? Well, it certainly could, as until the fires are out and the smoke is not there, this is going to be a feature. So when it gets bad, stay indoors if possible, and if you're outdoors, use N95 masks. If you're driving, make sure you set your AC on recirculate. That will help not bring in the outside air in.
Yeah, some good advice there. All right, well, we'll continue to watch what's going on with the smoke in the skies. But
if you're trying to beat the heat, you may look to cool off maybe with an electric fan, but did you know they can actually increase your risk of having a heat-related illness or even dying from a heat stroke?
Meteorologist Mark Elliott explains why and has more ways to keep you cool.
Yep, all good advice. Let's talk about the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke. It's important to recognize, actually, and both need some attention, but heat stroke is a deadly situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without
And some of the
medical
signs, exactly, include throbbing headaches, no sweating, which I think maybe people wouldn't realize that, yes, when you get the heat stroke, no sweating, which is different than heat exhaustion.
Heat exhaustion, excessive sweating. So when you see someone or even yourself, if you're aware of it, and all of a sudden you stop sweating, that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Notice red, dry skin. That's something that sets up with heat stroke. Different with heat exhaustion, though.
Yeah,
Pale,
clammy skin. Yes, difference. Now, in both cases, the pulse would be rapid, but it would be a weak pulse with heat exhaustion, a strong pulse with heat stroke.
So know these signs. Again, if you start to notice that on someone else as well, that's the time to make sure you're getting to medical attention, getting them to a cooler location and cooling down here. So this is something we're worried about, right? Because we have a lot of areas that are dealing with heat alerts. South Florida into the lower Mississippi Valley, the Southwest, you name it. Going to be very hot in these spots.
Yeah, important to be aware of your forecast here, especially if you're traveling someplace you're not used to that heat. You need to make sure that you are taking it easy here. And, we've got excessive heat warnings up in Phoenix. This 116 is a really big deal. We're talking about record-breaking temperatures, record streaks of temperatures, all kinds of things from Texas over into the parts of the Southwest.
You know what doesn't help? When you've got those dew points up into the 70s like we've got in Dallas, 72 for you with your dew point over the last few hours. We've been very, very muggy, plus those temperatures, which is going to make it feel like it's 110 at the peak of the heat.
Yeah, and by the end of the week, it expands. The heat actually gets worse in Florida by the time we get to the end of the week.
Whew.
Well, don't forget our
morning headquarters. One state is keeping a close eye on the tropics. That's as the storm barrels in, bringing the threat of heavy rain and wind.
Plus, beach
this summer.
I love a good legend. I just want to put it in a box on the top of the
Legends
screen.
are the best, right?
Legends are the best.
Explains so much.
Now, for this cluster of storms that has been maintaining some strength here, coming through southeastern Missouri, right along that zone, the southern edge of the cluster of storms. A lot of lightning there, but there also is now a severe thunderstorm warning. So watching out for the threat for hail or some gusty winds coming out of this one. There's the cell. You can see how it's a little more intense right in that area. So along with all the other threats, some heavier rainfall coming out of that as well. This includes parts of Iron and Reynolds County, Centerville, Lesterville under this warning until 10:15 local time. Watching this zone here again, that risk as that storm moves to the south and east. But that's not going to be the only storm we see today. There will be more. So things are already starting to get active, much more so as we get into the later afternoon hours. Storms will fire up across much of Kentucky. We've got southern Indiana and Illinois, also watching down into Tennessee as well, even into Arkansas. We'll see some thunderstorms developing. So we've got what's going on right now. Let's bring on the future radar and talk about what will happen as we get through the afternoon. Again, this is radar and convection in the future is tough to forecast here, but to give you a sense of what's going to go on, we'll get that instability really building by late afternoon, early evening, and that's when that new round of thunderstorms will really start to take shape. Watching Indiana, Ohio, Cincinnati under that risk. We've got parts of southern Missouri again with another round of storms coming through. Kentucky, we see storms here through this evening. Bowling Green, just one of the spots. It'll be scattered in nature. Not everyone gets it, but you see the general storm motion kind of diving down, coming in here, diving through parts of Illinois, Indiana, and then kind of moving from west to east over the Ohio Valley and the Kentucky Valley. And we'll be watching for multiple rounds of storms, multiple chances of storms coming in across that area. Quick look at Louisville. I'll just give you some timing here. Again, this is looking at the future radar. So just a sense of your timing is going to be more so as we get through the overnight hours and then continuing into early tomorrow morning. Another area to watch, the Central Plains. And we've had
question about it, but this is a little much, particularly when you talk about the length of time of having to deal with 110 plus.
I was just thinking, what would be worse? Dealing with one day of, let's say, 130. Okay. Like at Death Valley.
Yep.
Or dealing with 15 to 20 days of 110, 115 plus.
I definitely think the longer string is the worst.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, all right, let's switch gears here. We know what emoji you would use to describe that forecast. According to brandwatch.com.